Chapter 6. The Year of the Three Brides. 49 AC. The 40th year after Aegon's conquest gave the people of Westeros a welcome respite from the chaos and conflict that had gone before. It would be a year of peace, plenty, and marriage, remembered in the annals of the Seven Kingdoms as the Year of the Three Brides. The new year was but a fortnight old when news of the first of the three weddings came out of the west, from Fair Isle by the Sunset Sea. There, in a small swift ceremony under the sky, Rhaena Targaryen wed Andro Farman, the second son of the Lord of Fair Isle. It was the groom's first marriage, the bride's third. Though twice widowed, Rhaena was but 26. Her new husband, just 10 and 7, was notably younger, a comely and amiable youth said to be utterly besotted with his new wife. Their wedding was presided over by the groom's father, Mark Farman, Lord of Fair Isle, and conducted by his own septon. Lyman Lannister, Lord of Castley Rock, and his wife, Jocasta, were the only great lords in attendance. Two of Rhaena's former favorites, Samantha Stokeworth and Elaine Royce, made their way to Fair Isle in some haste to stand with the widowed queen, together with the groom's high-spirited sister, the Lady Alyssa. The remainder of the guests were bannermen and household knights sworn to either House Farman or House Lannister. King and court remained entirely ignorant of the marriage until a raven from the rock brought word, days after the wedding feast and the bedding that sealed the match. Chroniclers in King's Landing report that Queen Alyssa was deeply offended by her exclusion from her daughter's wedding, and that relations between mother and child were never as warm afterward, whereas Lord Rhaegar Baratheon was furious that Rhaena had dared remarry without the crown's leave. The crown in this instance being himself, as the young king's hand. Had leave been asked, however, there was no certainty it would have been granted, for Andro Farman, the second son of a minor lord, was thought by many to be far from worthy of the hand of a woman who had been twice a queen and remained the mother of the king's heir. As it happened, the youngest of Lord Rhaegar's brothers remained unwed as of 49 AC, and his lordship had two nephews by another brother who were also of a suitable age and lineage to be considered potential mates for a Targaryen widow, facts which might well explain both the hand's anger and the secrecy with which Queen Rhaena wed. King Jaehaerys himself and his sister Alysanne rejoiced at the tidings, dispatching gifts and congratulations to Fair Isle and commanding that the Red Keep's bells be rung in celebration. Whilst Rhaena Targaryen was celebrating her marriage on Fair Isle, back in King's Landing King Jaehaerys and his mother, the Queen Regent, were busy selecting the counselors who would help them rule the realm for the next 2 years. Conciliation remained their guiding principle, for the divisions that had so recently torn Westeros apart were far from healed. Rewarding his own loyalists and excluding Maegor's men and the faithful from power would only exacerbate the wounds and give rise to new grievances, the young king reasoned. His mother agreed. Accordingly, Jaehaerys reached out to the Lord of Claw Isle, Edwell Celtigar, who had been hand of the king under Maegor, and recalled him to King's Landing to serve as Lord Treasurer and Master of Coin. For Lord Admiral and Master of Ships, the young king turned to his uncle Daemon Valerion, Lord of the Tides, Queen Alyssa's brother and one of the first great lords to abandon Maegor the Cruel. Prentice Tully, Lord of Riverrun, was summoned to court to serve as Master of Laws. With him came his redoubtable wife, the Lady Lucinda, far famed for her piety. Command of the City Watch, the largest armed force in King's Landing, the king entrusted to Carl Corbray, Lord of Heart's Home, who had fought beside Aegon the Uncrowned beneath the God's eye. Above them all stood Rhaegar Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End and Hand of the King. It would be a mistake to underestimate the influence of Jacaerys Targaryen himself during the years of his regency, for despite his youth the boy king had a seat at most every council, but not all, as will be told shortly, and was never shy about letting his voice be heard. In the end, however, the final authority throughout this period rested with his mother, the Queen Regent, and the Hand, a redoubtable man in his own right. Blue-eyed and black-bearded and muscled like a bull, Lord Rhaegar was the eldest of 5 brothers, all grandsons of Orys One Hand, the first Baratheon Lord of Storm's End. Orys had been a bastard brother to Aegon the Conqueror and his most trusted commander. After slaying Argilac the Arrogant, last of the Durrandon, he had taken Argilac's daughter to wife. Lord Rhaegar could thus claim that both the blood of the dragon and that of the Storm Kings of old flowed in his veins. No swordsman, his lordship preferred to wield a double-bladed axe in battle, an axe, he oft said, large and heavy enough to cleave through a dragon's skull. Those were dangerous words during the reign of Maegor the Cruel, but if Rhaegar Baratheon feared Maegor's wrath, he hid it well. Men who knew him were unsurprised when he gave shelter to Queen Alyssa and her children after their flight from King's Landing, and when he was the first to proclaim Prince Jaehaerys king. His own brother Borys was heard to say that Rhaegar dreamed of facing King Maegor in single combat and cutting him down with his axe. That dream fate denied him. Instead of a kingslayer, Lord Rhaegar became a kingmaker, delivering to Prince Jaehaerys the Iron Throne. Few questioned his right to take his place at the side of the young king as hand. Some went so far as to whisper that it would be Rhaegar Baratheon who ruled the realm henceforth, for Jaehaerys was a boy and the son of a weak father, whilst his mother was only a woman. And when it was announced that Lord Rhaegar and Queen Alyssa were to marry, the whispers grew louder. For what is a queen's lord husband, if not a king? Lord Rhaegar had been married once before, but his wife had died young, taken off by a fever less than a year after their wedding. The Queen Regent Alyssa was 42 years old, and thought to be past her childbearing years, the Lord of Storm's End, 10 years her junior. Writing some years later, Septon Barth tells us that Jaehaerys was opposed to the marriage. The young king felt that his hand was overreaching himself, motivated more by a desire for power and position than a true affection for his mother. He was angry that neither his mother nor her suitor had sought his leave as well, Barth said. But as he had raised no objections to his sister's marriage, the king did not believe he had the right to prevent his mother's. Jaehaerys thus held his tongue and gave no hint of his misgivings save to a few close confidants. The hand was admired for his courage, respected for his strength, feared for his military prowess and skill at arms. The Queen Regent was loved. So beautiful, so brave, so tragic, women said of her. Even such lords as might have balked at a woman ruling over them were willing to accept her as their liege, secure in the knowledge that she had Rhaegar Baratheon standing beside her, and the young king less than a year away from his 16th nameday. She had been a beautiful child, all men agreed, the daughter of the mighty Athen Valerion, Lord of the Tides, and his lady wife Alara of House Massey. Her line was ancient, proud, and rich, her mother esteemed as a great beauty, her grandsire amongst the oldest and closest friends of Aegon the Dragon and his queens. The gods blessed Alyssa herself with the deep purple eyes and shining silvery hair of old Valyria, and gave her charm and wit and kindness as well, and as she grew suitors flocked around her from every corner of the realm. There was never any true question of whom she would wed, however. For a girl such as her, only royalty would suffice, and in the year 22 AC she married Prince Aenys Targaryen, the unquestioned heir to the Iron Throne. Theirs was a happy and fruitful marriage. Prince Aenys was a gentle and attentive husband, warm-natured, generous, and never unfaithful. Alyssa bore him 5 strong, healthy children, 2 daughters and 3 sons, a 6th child. Another daughter died in her cradle shortly after birth, and when his sire died in 37 AC, the crown passed to Aenys, and Alyssa became his queen. In the years that followed, she saw her husband's reign crumble and turn to ash, as enemies rose up all around him. In 42 AC he died, a broken man and despised, only 35 years of age. The queen scarce had time to grieve for him before his brother seized the throne that rightly belonged to her eldest son. She saw her son rise up against his uncle and die, together with his dragon. A short while later, her second son followed him to the funeral pyre, tortured to death by Tyanna of the Tower. Together with her 2 youngest children, Alyssa was made a prisoner in all but name of the man who had brought about the death of her sons, and was made to bear witness when her eldest daughter was forced into marriage to that same monster. The Game of Thrones takes many a queer turn, however, and Maegor himself had fallen in turn, in no small part thanks to the courage of the widowed Queen Alyssa, and the boldness of Lord Rhaegar, who had befriended her and taken her in when no one else would. The gods had been good to them and granted them victory, and now the woman who had been Alyssa of House Valerion was to be given a second chance at happiness with a new husband. The wedding of the king's hand and the Queen Regent was to be as splendid as that of the widowed Queen Rhaena had been modest. The High Septon himself would perform the marriage rites, on the 7th day of the 7th moon of the new year. The site would be the half-completed dragon pit, still open to the sky, whose rising tiers of stone benches would allow for tens of thousands to observe the nuptials. The celebrations would include a great tourney, 7 days of feasts and frolics, and even a mock sea battle to be fought in the waters of Blackwater Bay. No wedding half so magnificent had been celebrated in Westeros in living memory, and lords great and small from throughout the 7 kingdoms and beyond gathered to be part of it. Donal Hightower came up from Aldtown with 100 knights and 77 of the most devout, escorting His High Holiness the High Septon, whilst Lyman Lannister brought 300 knights from Castle Rock. Brandon Stark, the ailing Lord of Winterfell, made the long journey down from the north with his sons Walton and Alaric, attended by a dozen fierce northern bannermen and 30 sworn brothers of the Night's Watch. Lords Arryn, Corbray, and Royce represented the Vale, Lords Selmy, Dondarrion, and Tarly the Dornish marches. Even from beyond the borders of the realm the great and mighty came, the Prince of Dorne sent his sister, the Sea Lord of Braavos a son. The Archon of Tyrosh crossed the narrow sea himself with his maiden daughter, as did no fewer than 22 magisters from the free city of Pentos. All brought handsome gifts to bestow on the hand and queen regent, the most lavish came from those who had only lately been Maegor's men, and from Rickard Rowan and Torgon Oakhart, who had marched with Septon Moon. The wedding guests came ostensibly to celebrate the union of Rhaegar Baratheon and the Dowager Queen, but they had other reasons for attendance, it should not be doubted. Many wished to treat with the Hand, who was seen by many as the true power in the realm, others wished to take the measure of their new boy king. Nor did His Grace deny them that opportunity. Sir Giles Morrigan, the king's champion and sworn shield, announced that Jaehaerys would be pleased to grant audience to any lord or landed knight who wished to meet with him, and 60 accepted his invitation. Eschewing the great hall and the majesty of the Iron Throne, the young king entertained the lords in the intimacy of his solar, attended only by Sir Giles, a maester, and a few servants. There, it is said, he encouraged each man to speak freely and share his views on the problems of the realm and how they might best be overcome. He is not his father's son, Lord Royce told his maester afterward, grudging praise mayhaps, but praise all the same. Lord Vance of Wayfarer's Rest was heard to say, he listens well, but says little. Rickard Rowan found Jaehaerys gentle and soft-spoken, Kyle Connington thought him witty and good-humored, Morden Caron cautious and shrewd. He laughs often and freely, even at himself, John Murdens said approvingly, but Alec Hunter thought him stern, and Torgon Oakhart grim. Lord Mallister pronounced him wise beyond his years, whilst Lord Derry said he promised to be the sort of king any lord should be proud to kneel to. The most profound praise came from Brandon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, who said, I see his grandsire in him. The king's hand attended none of these audiences, but it should not be thought that Lord Rhaegar was an inattentive host. The hours his lordship spent with his guests were devoted to other pursuits, however. He hunted with them, hawked with them, gambled with them, feasted with them, and drank the royal cellars dry. After the wedding, when the tourney began, Lord Rhaegar was present for every tilt and every melee, surrounded by a lively and oft-drunken coterie of great lords and famous knights. The most notorious of his lordship's entertainments occurred 2 days before the ceremony, however. Though no record of it exists in any court chronicle, tales told by servants and repeated for many years thereafter amongst the small folk claim that Lord Rhaegar's brothers had brought 7 virgins across the narrow sea from the finest pleasure houses of Lee. Queen Alyssa had surrendered her own maidenhood many years before to Aenys Targaryen, so there could be no question of Lord Rhaegar deflowering her on their wedding night. The Lysna maidens were meant to make up for that lack. If the whispers heard about court afterward were true, his lordship supposedly plucked the flowers of 4 of the girls before exhaustion and drink did him in. His brothers, nephews, and friends did for the other 3, along with 20 older beauties who had sailed with them from Lee. Whilst the hand roistered and King Jaehaerys sat in audience with the lords of the realm, his sister Princess Alysanne entertained the high-born women who had come with them to King's Landing. The king's elder sister, Rhaena, had chosen not to attend the nuptials, preferring to remain on Fair Isle with her own new husband in her court, and the Queen Regent Alyssa was busy with preparations for the wedding, so the task of playing hostess to the wives, daughters, and sisters of the great and mighty fell to Alysanne. Though she had only recently turned 13, the young princess rose to the challenge brilliantly, all agreed. For 7 days and 7 nights, she broke her fast with one group of high-born ladies, dined with a second, supped with a third. She showed them the wonders of the Red Keep, sailed with them on Blackwater Bay, and rode with them about the city. Alysanne Targaryen, the youngest child of King Aenys and Queen Alyssa, had been little known amongst the lords and ladies of the realm before then. Her childhood had been spent in the shadow of her brothers and her elder sister, Rhaena, and when she was spoken of at all it was as, the little maid, and, the other daughter. She was little, this was true, slim and slight of frame. Alysanne was oft described as pretty but seldom as beautiful, though she was born of a house renowned for beauty. Her eyes were blue rather than purple, her hair a mass of honey-colored curls. No man ever questioned her wits. Later, it would be said of her that she learned to read before she was weaned, and the court fool would make japes about little Alysanne dribbling mother's milk on Valyrian scrolls as she tried to read whilst suckling at her wet nurse's teat. Had she been a boy she would surely have been sent to the citadel to forge a maester's chain, Septon Barth would say of her. For that wise man esteemed her even more than her husband, whom he served for so long. That was far in the future. However, in 49 AC, Alysanne was but a girl of 13 years, yet all the chronicles agree that she made a powerful impression on those who met her.